Hello, friend. Welcome to this discussion titled Treat Your Fears Before You Step Into Marriage. It's very, very important that you treat your fear before stepping into marriage. For those of you who are very conversant with the Holy Scripture, the book of Job, chapter 3, verse 25, Job cried out, saying, "What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me." Call it instinct, call it anything. In most cases, people who are going into marriage, they have certain fears. And these fears need to be treated. If you don't treat such fear, it may actually happen to you, just like Job cried out. So there are fears in relationship that need to be treated if you want that relationship to be sustainable and enjoyable. And that is why I want to take you through some things that can help you in this regard. One of the greatest things, feared by a lot of young persons who are getting into marriage is the fear of marrying the wrong person. The fear of marrying the wrong person. All right? I had this friend, I had worked with him somewhere. He actually discovered that he married the wrong wife. Is that the wrong wife? Maybe I'm wrong. But let me tell you what happened. They started having crises, and a lot of efforts were put in to settle this crisis. Yet it wasn't getting settled until the thing became a full-blown case. And so police, officers were dragged into the matter. The young man was taken to police station and all of that. When they were bailed and he returned back home and they were trying to still settle this matter, the young lady opened up to him, surprisingly told him, "Look, I actually never loved you." He was shocked to hear that. I said, "I never loved you." When we first started this relationship, according to her, that love was there. But then your family said no, they never wanted me to marry you. And because of the way your mom was so adamant, was so firm in making sure this marriage never worked, I decided to prove a point. I decided to show her that I can actually marry you. So all those fights you saw me putting in towards the latter part of that relationship before the marriage were actually meant to drive my point. The fact that I can marry you, and I've achieved that. And for your information, I'm done. And that was how she stepped out of that marriage. And that was how that marriage ended. It was a very painful one. There was another case of a very good friend who got married to someone, an engineer, as she knew it. So they got married and all of that. Only to discover that this young man was actually a student that was expelled from the university. He was studying something around engineering, and so after he was expelled, he picked the nickname engineer. All his friends knew him as an engineer, and he got into ICT. But for real, he wasn't a graduate at all. But he deceived this young lady, and this young lady got into that relationship thinking she was getting married to an engineer. Well, it was a very bad case. They couldn't manage the situation, and that brought the relationship to an end. So you see a lot of fake things happening. So there is this fear of making mistake, getting married to the wrong person. My prayer is that fear will not happen to you. All right, there was this young lady I was guiding in marriage. She entered into this relationship with a young man who claims to be a captain in Nigerian army. And so they were driving that relationship. Somehow I got to know the young man, interacted with him, and I told her, behind that, "Look, I'm not so comfortable with this young man. He's smart, and he seems to be playing on your psychology here." He was doing what I call crowding out effect. Crowding out effect is when a young man is interested in a lady and try to stay so close to her to a point where all other guys around her will respect that relationship and shift away. And so if you're not careful, he seems to be the only man around you. If you're also not careful, you may see him as the only angel you know. And that was what this guy was trying to do, positioning himself as an angel. Well, to cut the story short, after an investigation, something happened, and then he duped my friend of ₦1 million. they had to use police to go fetch him, and then the guy also escaped. So that was when it was done on her that this guy was actually a fake person. It was in the course of that investigation she discovered that the young man was actually a barracks boy who was nicknamed Captain, and so he pretended to be a captain in the army. He actually took her to his office where he had packaged the environment to look like his own office, and when he was coming, real soldiers were saluting him. He played game and all of that with them, and so the young lady was deceived, thinking she was getting into a relationship with a captain. Essentially, she was lucky that relationship was not tied into a marriage, and she was able to escape. And then she also discovered that the young man was actually married with children. You see, so this fear is real fear. This fear can be so disturbing sometimes, even when you know the person is sincere, but you are concerned about issue of compatibility. You are concerned about issue of values. You may not share the same values with this young person. Okay, you may be concerned about future changes. It may be sounding so nice now, but what if in the future and there are changes? Children are coming, there's no job again, the inflow is not coming as expected. Would this young man remain the same? So this kind of fear, or even the simple anxiety of making a long-term commitment, lifelong commitment in that relationship, these are things that can stay off fear. All right, the challenges of also realizing that you have married the wrong person can be so overwhelming and paralyzing. I mean, a lot of young persons are in this kind of situation, and life can be very, very difficult when you see yourself in such situation. Another challenge some people have is the fear of losing one's personal identity. Okay, this is very common among young ladies. The fear of losing their identity when two individuals have gotten committed into making a good marriage, and then there is always natural for someone to worry about overshadowing role of the spouse. And so for some persons is a big issue getting to lose this personal identity. They could call it their brand and all of that. So another one is the fear of replicating your parents' marriage. Maybe that kind of marriage wasn't something very ideal. Maybe it's in the environment where the parent had been having issues. Parents have been observed and as people who were having crisis in their homes. They had this distant marriage and all of that. So this kind of fear can be so worrisome to young persons who are getting into marriage. All right, I know a young lady. She came from a family that had a lot of crisis. Daddy and mommy always fighting. But she rather decided that, look, this kind of thing will not happen in her own home. And I've watched her over the years trying to make sure that it never happens. All right? So that kind of fear can be so disturbing. Maybe it's not even your parents, but elderly friends around you, elderly neighbors, elderly associates that you look up to, and then you look at them, you don't see something admirable about their marriage. All right, so this can create fear, anxiety. Okay, many young persons actually desire to avoid this kind of mistake. Maybe they have witnessed this as they grow up. They rather desire to build happier and more fulfilling marriage. Okay, but this kind of fear sometimes can be quite paralyzing. It can make someone become so afraid to make serious commitment in relationship, in marriage. There's this colleague of mine, I teach in the university, and this guy is passing through a lot of difficulties in his marriage. At a closer investigation, it was discovered that the wife came from a family where they had serious conflicts. Her father and her mother, they were always fighting. There was this quarrel among them. And yeah, even though she came from a very good Christian background, she had made up her mind that she would never allow any man to subdue her. And so she came into that marriage prepared for battle. it wasn't so obvious at the beginning, but with time it became obvious that she was out for marriage, insisting that what happened to her mom, how her father subdued, oppressed her mom, will never happen to her. Coincidentally, she's the one oppressing the young man today. All right, so this is a very unfortunate situation. The reality is that relationship we observe while we are growing up can be very, very significant in influencing our perception about marriage, about relationship. It can have significant impact. If our parents struggled with communication, faced constant conflict, or seem to be emotionally at distance, we might fear that this kind of pattern may inevitably repeat in our own relationship. So this fear is understandable. It can be overcome with the right mindset and a very understanding partner. All right. Then the other fear is this fear of falling out of love. The initial passion or excitement of that relationship can give way to routine and over familiarity among the couple, making them worry that their love, which they once had, is fading. So young people are often afraid of this possibility, or even having to struggle to measure up to the person's expectation, maybe your partner's expectation of an ideal spouse. You have a partner who maybe he was in a relationship before with someone, and then that didn't work, and you are now the person on board. You may find yourself struggling to meet the expectation of this your spouse because of the idol, permit me to put it that way, he had created or she had created in her mind, given the former relationship, and that may cause a lot of conflict. Okay, so this may affect that kind of relationship in marriage adversely, and that is another fear that a lot of young persons have. There are so many other fears that time would not permit me to treat in this video. And so I want to ask you, are you in a relationship for marriage? Are you about getting married? Are you thinking about marriage relationship? What is that fear you have? What is the fear your partner has? These are often truly, this can often be identified during a very casual discussion. For me, I think I prefer getting to identify it during a casual discussion rather than a very official questionnaire kind of meeting. What do I mean by that? If you are discussing with someone, and if you listen not just to what the person is saying, but even what the person is not telling you, why he or she is saying what he's saying. Oh, maybe that looks a bit complicated. I'm telling you something now, for instance. You shouldn't just be listening to what I'm telling you. You should also listen to the motive behind what I am telling you, or what I am not telling you, in trying to respond to your question or the discussion. Alright, so if you're able to sieve out, identify such fears, it becomes easier to handle. Unlike when you sit your partner down and it becomes like an interview kind of meeting. Oh boy, or fine girl, or sweetie, whatever you call yourself, honey, what are your fears in relationship? And the person will tell you, and then you ask the person, what is your fear? The person will tell you. Sometimes the ones that are not discussed are more critical in that kind of meeting, and to identify them, there is need for communication in that relationship. And that is why I feel very uncomfortable if you are in a relationship of marriage with someone and the person is not coming all out for discussion. I mean, there may be distance in terms of geographical locations, but ICT has made it possible that you can discuss with people. You discuss. While you discuss, you'll be able to identify, what is the fear of this individual. If you desire to enjoy any relationship, I want to encourage you to tactically identify the fears of your partner. And then if you identify it, you ask yourself, is this something you can handle? Sometimes there are fears you identify and you discover that it's not something you can handle. Maybe somebody is feeling so much insecure in relationship. You've tried to convince the person. You've tried to build this person's trust. The person is not able to develop trust in you. He can't trust you. You may need to vote by leg. You may need to step out of that relationship. You know why? Because trust is the hinges that holds together any relationship. Once trust is broken, that relationship is just a function of time. It will collapse. By the way, if you're in any relationship and trust has collapsed in that relationship, do your best to rebuild it. Broken walls can be rebuilt. If it was there before, it can be rebuilt. If it wasn't there, then there must be deliberate effort to build it up. Okay? So you ask yourself whether this fear is something you can handle. If you cannot handle the fear of your partner, please excuse yourself from that relationship. If you can handle it, beautiful. And sometimes you may be able to handle it without the person knowing. You may tell yourself, look, I have known the fear of this individual. I will not let it happen. For instance, when I was getting married and I discovered the fear of my wife, I promised myself that this fear would not happen to her. And by God's grace, 15 years down the line, as in making this video 2025, last year we celebrated 15 years of our wedding anniversary. She can testify. She has mentioned it elsewhere in different occasions. I've been so careful to make sure that her fears doesn't happen to her. And then she also did something beautiful. While we were in a relationship, one day she told me, I know your fears. You handle a lot of young people. You do a lot of mentorship program. And you are afraid not to marry anyone who will scare away young people from you. Don't worry, I will not scare them away. I will bring more of them to you because I see you have that passion. And to be frank, she is not just bringing them. We now work together to mentor young people. So that fear never came. She was careful to do that. All right. So you identify the fear of your partner and ask yourself if it's something you can handle. And then you also tactically treat your own fears. Identify your own fears and see how to address them. If it's something you need to discuss with him or her, do that. If it's something you don't want to discuss, but you want to find out without the person knowing whether this your fear is a mirage or real, or whether it is possible to happen or not, then you engage in that kind of discussion. For instance, you don't like issue of I don't know how to put it. You don't like a nagging wife, okay? And then you are talking with her and you are just being very careful. You may not have pronounced issue of nagging, but you begin to discuss things that could try to find out her views about that kind of issues. All right, or there is a lifestyle you see in your young man and you don't really, or you in young men and you don't want it in your young man or your husband to be. You find a way of engaging the person in discussion around that areas to see how he comes up, how he reacts to that kind of discussion. That could tell you the mindset behind the person. Okay, so that is it. There are so many other fears. The point I'm making is that you need to identify your own fears. The point I'm making, you identify your fears. You identify the fears of your partner. If it's not treated at both ends, you may be sitting on a gunpowder that will blow up after some time. All right, if you identify your partner's fear, and something you can handle, then you keep it at the back of your mind. I know a young man who was in a relationship, and one of his greatest fears is that he never wanted a domineering wife. And so one day he came to discuss that with me, and then he shared with me. I said, find a way of discussing, engaging with your wife to be, and watch her reaction to that effect. And I think that fear was well treated. And today they make very beautiful couple. All right. And then another young lady who was in a relationship, and she discovered that she never wanted to be in a relationship where her voice would not be heard. And so while they were, cutting, she had to demand to be heard occasionally. When the young man wasn't forthcoming, giving her room to be heard, she did something I love. she stepped out of that relationship and she told the young man, sorry, I'm not continuing with you. The young man had to start trying to find out what the matter was, and then when he identified it, he came to her apologizing and reassuring her that that fear will never happen again. They've been married for some years now, and I love the way he treats the wife. He's been very careful not to make sure that it happens, to her. I met them recently, and he was trying to do something, and the wife suggested something. He said, wow, that's brilliant, I'll do it that way. And then he wanted to leave. I called his attention. I said, you see how much this your beautiful wife has become very resourceful to you. All right, so it's something you need to identify and treat. If you can't treat it, if you are not sure of handling that fear, please don't enter into it. Now I want to conclude with critical tips for overcoming fear in relationship and marriage. All right, fear can actually sabotage the best of our intentions. It can infiltrate relationships and marriages and crash them. It can actually keep you away from achieving your goal as a person. Fear. Sometimes that fear may just be a mirage. It never existed. Then you are just afraid because you're a human being. It's natural. Okay? Fear can also silence good people who might have otherwise been very good in communication. But because that fear came and it wasn't well handled, you see the person go into his or her own shield without coming up to discuss again. And then you see yourself complaining that, look, your wife does not talk or your husband does not talk, without knowing that you are the one that have silenced that person, maybe by your action. So investigate that and see whether you are the one that has made that fear to come upon the person. All right, in order to live up to our full potential and to make your life and your marriage the best they can be, it is essential that you treat your fears. I cannot overemphasize this point. Please identify your partner's fear and your own fears and make sure that these things are treated before you step into that marriage relationship. So you wouldn't shout out like Job, what I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. It will not happen to you, I pray. But God has also given you that wisdom to investigate things, relationship, investigate an individual. And that is why one of the first things I want to mention here in trying to address your fear is to make sure you discuss them. All right? Fears during relationship or marriage can be effectively addressed through proactive steps such as communication between the two parties. Whether you are addressing it directly or you are addressing it indirectly, try to make sure you discuss your fears. All right, and it can also be addressed during counseling, premarital counseling. A lot of young persons get married today without going through counseling. It's not the best. Look for a very successful or experienced couple and sit under them for counseling, whether it's organized in your religion, church or something. If it is not, look for somebody. Sometimes it's even organized and it looks very formal. Look for somebody you can look up to, someone you appreciate, and let this couple guide you. During such counseling session, this can help a prospective couple explore their relationship in depth, trying to understand each other's values, goals, expectations, and develop strong communication skills. By engaging in counseling, prospective couples can gain clarity about their compatibility and, of course, readiness for marriage. And then will be prepared to make any necessary compromise or adjustment, to accommodate each other. And that is why, again and again, I will recommend you discuss your fear and, if as much as possible, seek for counseling. The other point I want to suggest is that you should do the right thing in spite of your fears. Often overcoming fear means doing the right thing even when you are afraid to do it. Some of us, of course, life is full of risk. Okay? life is full of risk. And if you're not a risk taker, call it calculated risk taker, you can't make any progress. So to be frank with you, this works more easily in theory than in practice. Doing the right thing in spite of your fears. It's easy to say it than in practice. In real life, making move despite your fear could result in real consequences, and I need to acknowledge that. For instance, if you discover that your family is unduly interfering with your family, the family you are building, and you decide to politely make them understand their limitations, that may result in crisis between you and your bigger family, or what I could call the extended family in this regard. Or the lady is working somewhere, and the person supporting that career is an ex friend or something, and that ex friend is putting undue pressure on you as a lady. If you decide to let him know the limitation, now you are in marriage or in another relationship, that may make you pay with your career. But of course, you will be doing the right thing. So doing the right thing in spite of your fear is a key strategy in overcoming that kind of fear we have in relationship. I want to show you what I call doing the right thing matrix. Doing the right thing matrix is a 4-box. Is 4 box like this, and one side here has to do with your mind and your conscience. The other side has to do with your heart. So you may be doing the right thing for the wrong reason. You may be doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason. You may be doing the wrong thing for the right reason. You may be doing the right thing for the right reason. So these are different options. Okay? So in trying to make that kind of decision, you may find yourself inside this kind of box. And then you do your matrix to decide where you want to stand. Example, like doing the right thing with wrong reason could be like getting married to someone even when you don't love the person. I mean, getting married is good, but is the right thing you are doing for wrong reason. You don't love the person, but there's pressure on you, like the lady I mentioned who told the young man that he never loved him. She wanted to prove a point. She got married, which is right, but for the wrong reason, to prove a point. All right? You may be doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason. For instance, someone is using intimidation on the spouse because you want to always be considered to be more superior in this partnership. That's the wrong thing, and you are struggling for superiority. That's also a wrong thing in marriage relationship. And then doing the wrong thing for the right reason. For instance, you may want to hide your major past error or mistakes because you love the person and you don't want to lose this person. So you are hiding what information this person need to have. A young man was to get married to someone, and then this lady had got a child out of wedlock in her father's house. It could happen to anyone who lived a careless life or out of grace, as a matter of fact. So, but I expected that she would tell anybody who is coming that, look, I have a baby in the house. The person who will marry you and love you will come. But when you hide that information, the world is flat. That person will discover. And so this friend later discovered and left that relationship. They had married anyway. And then there was this other case, the case I mentioned, the fake engineer. All right? He never wanted to lose this lady, and so he concealed this important part of his past until the lady discovered it when they needed to travel out of the country, and there was no what do you call it, from the university, no transcript from the young man forthcoming. And so when she started digging deep, she discovered that he never graduated from any university as he claimed. All right? And then there was this other case, a very funny one. This lady had major surgery as a young person, and in the course of that surgery, the doctor told her you may not have a baby anymore because they tampered with her womb for her to survive. The family had to sign before the doctor continued with that procedure. So she survived that surgery. They had several cases they treated, and she grew up with this mindset that she's not going to have a child. So she was ready that anybody coming, she would tell the person, if the person agrees, they will adopt a child. And so a young man came. She explained herself clearly that medically it's been proven that she may not have her own baby. And the young man insisted that he was going to marry her. She said, no, I don't want to hurt you. All right? No, I don't want to hurt you. The young man insisted. She was saying no. For me, that no could be considered like a wrong thing. For the right reason, she doesn't want to hurt this young man, and she was saying no. The young man insisted, and they got married. All right? The truth is that shortly after their marriage, she had miscarriage, and it was like a miracle happened. Where is this coming from? And today they have their first child, a handsome boy. All right? So, and then doing the right thing for the right reason is what many of us know about. You may want to marry the right person and for the right reason. All right? So these are things you may need to consider to be sure of the decision you are making in relationship, using the do the right thing matrix. And then the other point I want to discuss as I conclude is that you should focus less on what others think about you. When we hold ourselves, it is often because we are worried about what others will say or think, what the other person, your party, the person you are in relationship with. All right? Why it's important to consider the opinion of others? I believe so much in considering the opinion of others because you are not an island. There are times when worrying too much about what reaction or opinion others will take will sabotage your own success. So examine your goal in such situation. Examine the obstacle. If moving forward aligns with your perceived God's plan for your life and of course your values, you may consider pressing forward. And if it is possible, you should try to do it while maintaining as much possible, maintaining as much peace as possible in that kind of relationship. Of course, this may call for a lot of negotiation. All right. The other point I need to make here is that you need to learn to take the first step. Often taking the first step is one of the biggest hurdle to overcoming fear. We often get trapped into what I call overthinking about situation rather than taking the right action you need to take. So this often pulls us into inaction, which results in more fear. So rather than withdrawing from a situation that scares you, look inward to identify what is making you afraid. Then make the right decision, okay, and for the right reason, being emotionally stable in making that decision, and then taking the right step. The conclusion of this matter for me is that overcoming fear is required in order for us to reach our full potential. All right? That is true whether you are working on personal development or relationship for marriage or other kinds of relationship. Maybe you're already married. Addressing your fear is important. Or relationships such as friendship and family bonds. Addressing your fears will help you create a happy marriage that is resilient and fulfilling. So don't forget, marriage is sweet and enjoyable. All you need to do is to do the right thing for the right reason. If you do that, you will enjoy your marriage. On that note, I want to say a very big thank you for watching and spending this time with us. This is actually trying to guide young persons who are getting into a relationship to make sure they don't make that mistake where their fear comes upon them. If you're in that category, please treat your fear. If you are not, please share this with those who may be in that category so that they will learn to treat their fears. You may also want to check out other marriage related videos in the description of this video. For instance, I had treated a case where how a lady can handle a marriage proposal coming from a stranger. Someone got information about you and you don't know this person, but he learned that you're a nice person, you fear God, you are, you are homely and all of that, and he has come to propose to you, but you don't know him, how to handle such proposal. If you check the description in this video, you will see it. Other related videos in the description shared here, are issues around them 10 habits that destroy love, or 7 shadows of love. Some people pursue shadows of love thinking they have found love, and they get disappointed and seriously hurt. Or they read them. There's this other video on red flags that when you see in men, you need to avoid their marriage proposal. You shouldn't say yes to them. And then there's another video on top qualities to look out for in your future husband or your future wife. I also have a video, the link is here, on perfect wife and how to find one. All right, so please go ahead and share this with those that will find it very, very educative, informative. All right, and that will be appreciated, especially those who are about making decisions on marriage. Some of these things are better addressed before you get into it. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and God bless you. Cheers.